Alright, boils and ghouls, welcome back to the Horror After Dark podcast in the sack with JT. So, I posted the picture, the cover of this movie on the community tab, Shrooms, from 2007. I was browsing on Tubi and I saw it, and I haven't seen this movie since it came out. I don't think I've seen it since. If I did, I don't remember. But this is a supernatural slasher film where we have this group of friends who end up going to Ireland and picking and eating psychedelic mushrooms, and the killer starts taking them out one by one. Now, this was 2007. This is 17 years ago. So if I haven't seen this movie since then, I don't remember really anything from this except for that basic plot. So this is going to be fun to rewatch and dive into. There is a fun fact I read about this movie that some of the shooting locations in Ireland, one of them was County Monaghan, which is where my grandfather was from. But let's deep dive and take some shrooms from 2007. Did I say take? I meant talk. Before we get into the movie, this is, again, like I told some people in our group chat on Instagram, that I can't schedule shit anymore. Besides interviews and live streams. Besides that, I can't schedule anything anymore, so I'm just going to not announce shit from now on. And I said the last announcement would be the Cuckoo review for today. I'm hoping to still get to that. But this is the problem. There's so much shit to watch nowadays that just looking for a movie to watch is so hard. But then a lot of times I'll watch a movie and then that's when I do a video on it. But then sometimes a day or two will go by when I can't record a video. And then the more time that goes by, then I'm in a different mood for a different movie to talk about. And so I just can't say anything's coming anymore. So just expect videos constantly as always. But whatever they are, surprise for you guys. I bet it was a nice surprise to see Shrooms pop up on the notifications. Also, of course, Slasher September doesn't count because it's a whole themed month, so fuck you. I think it's a little hysterical that the opening production company, the first name that pops up when this movie starts, is Ingenious Film Partners. Considering that, like I said, this movie, from what I remember, is not that great. But it's a fun watch, is what I remember. I can be totally wrong, and by the end of this, I'll be pissed, and you'll know it. But I remember having fun with it, because I do remember this movie blending the lines between what's really happening and the hallucinations from the shrooms, which are very overblown and exaggerated, of course, but whatever, it's a movie, which is something you rarely hear me say. But the whole idea of having this group of friends tripping on mushrooms in the woods, and then a killer is after them, and not knowing what's real and what's not. I remember them doing a very good job with that. The cast and the characters, the acting's not bad. It's just very generic feeling for the 2000s. Like, it feels like a generic slasher film from the mid-2000s type of cast and dialogue and stuff. So, again, it's not great, but it's not terrible in any way. And, I mean, of course, it's Ireland. I've been there twice, actually. It's so gorgeous. And hence, the cinematography is beautiful in this movie. So it's got that going for it, too. It looks really nice. So these friends end up getting on a plane. They get to Ireland, and then they meet their friend over there who is the expert on mushrooms and starts breaking down what they're going to look for, and he shows the picture in the book and stuff. I mean, I know there's people who pick mushrooms and stuff. I would just be too afraid that I fucked up somehow or in some way and I picked a mushroom that looks like, how do you know there's not a mushroom that looks almost identical to that one, and it'll kill your ass in about 4 hours after you eat it? That's my fear. That's why I would never go do this and pick mushrooms and then ingest them. Like, I just don't have enough faith in myself that I wouldn't die. But that's their plan. And the shroom expert guy, he's actually a decent character. And then there's like the super hippie guy with the long blonde hair. There's no fucking names in this movie. Just like Slasher September. Just like last year and the year before it. This Slasher September will have no names for most of the cast because all of these people are just bodies. We'll get the main character's name, the final girl. We'll get that one. She's pretty cute actually in this movie too. But everybody else, it doesn't matter unless I hear the name. Now, despite the setting in the woods being very effective for this movie, and I'm not getting into I would never endorse or tell someone to go and take shrooms or anything like that. But I would never trip on mushrooms in the middle of the fucking woods. Yeah, nature's nice and stuff. You can go hang out in your backyard if you want. There is so much that can go wrong from going deep into the woods just without the mushrooms in your system. You can look at the Blair Witch Project. I mean, yeah, there's supernatural shit going on, but they get lost very easily. You can get lost in the woods so easily. And then you don't have enough food and shit to find your way out. I mean, you have enough concerns without tripping balls, is the point I'm trying to make. So I would never go out into the woods and, first of all, pick mushrooms, like I said. And then second of all, just camp out there and trip balls on mushrooms for days? And I don't know. I mean, it doesn't last days, but you get what I'm saying. I guess the main point I'm trying to make is these people deserve what happens to them being killed because they're fucking stupid. Alright, so this movie already has stupidity from the 10-minute mark or less. They hit a goat on their way deep into the woods and shit. And they get out. And then this further adds to my point. You don't take mushrooms and trip in the woods after hitting a goat and blood splattering all over the car. You gotta get out and deal with this. That's not the mind state you want to be in tripping, trust me. And Tara is the main chick. But they go up to this goat, and then one of the girls says, "Oh, maybe we should take it to a vet to have it humanely destroyed." Oh, fuck you, lady. Look, I understand people who adore their animals and their pets, but roll with me on this. I see where she's coming from, but it's obviously fucking dead. They killed it. It's gonna die here. Put it out of its misery. You don't... What, they're gonna get back in the van, and they're gonna drive all that way back and find a vet in Ireland? I don't know how easy it is. I mean, compared to here in the States, they're gonna find a vet all that time just to kill this thing that's gonna die anyway. So then he ends up, I don't know, and then it ends up jump scaring the guy, and he ends up bashing his brains in, and then they end up saying, "Is that humane enough for you?" And she says that he's evil. Again, no. Think of it this way. If you had your friend in combat who's bleeding out and dying next to you, and he's telling you, "Please, kill me, and put me out of my misery." And we've seen this in a lot of movies, too. Texas Chainsaw, the remake comes to mind with Erin's boyfriend, when she has to kill him because he's on the meat hook. It's a mercy killing. Imagine her picking him off the hook and taking him to a doctor instead of putting him out of his misery. That's how I look at it, and it's retarded. So it starts off this movie not too great, and then we see these weird motherfuckers in the woods with like axes and shit. And the guys ask, "Who are those guys?" He says that's their dinner, the goat. So, like I said, they were going to eat this goat. There's no taking them to a vet. I'm in a talky mood, so this is going to be like deep diving and going into every like little thing in this movie. So if you don't love my voice and my content and shit, then now's about the time to click off. Also, quick PSA. If there's any editing that may sound abrupt or weird in this episode, it's probably because I had to cut something real quick to avoid self-incriminating myself in some way. And yeah, so they end up dragging this goat, these deformed looking weirdos, and right in front of everybody, they give zero shits, and then they drag it away into the woods, and they're going like whoop, 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 and like making weird ass noises, and the guy calls them the indigenous people, the shroom expert, still haven't got his name. Then the douchebag, there's a lot of, like I said, the characters are not good in this movie. The main chick isn't even that likable, but she's fine for this type of movie. He screams out to them, "Crack a motherfucker," and the other guy tells him to shut up. It's terribly written. And yet they still think it's a good idea to trip balls in the woods, knowing now that there are weird group of deformed fuckers in the woods that have hatchets and they eat goats for a living. Not for a living, but you know what I mean. And they still think it's a great mind state to be in, to eat mushrooms in the middle of nowhere. Normal people were scared of taking shrooms in college and going to class because of what the hell you could freak out. Let alone when you know there's deranged people in the woods you're camping out. I don't know. And this is pretty much like a blind watch because I don't remember anything from this. Then they have to take the phones out of play, of course. And part of me wants to agree with the shroom expert. He's just the shroom expert at this point. He ain't getting a name even if I hear it 10 times. He says that you have to be at one with nature. And more importantly, I mean, this is what I agree with, that you don't want to be calling somebody by accident when you're tripping balls in the woods and accidentally called 911 or anything like that. So I agree with him a little bit, but like 35-year-old me now says and knows, no, I would never give my phone up if I was going to be doing what these people were doing in any way, shape, or form. So he gets one of the guys to give his phone up finally after saying it's his whole life. He's lost without it. It's like giving up his freedom. So he gives him the keys to the van and he finally gives it over. So it makes sense, sort of. It works for the movie, but still, I would never fucking give that phone up. Because what exactly is he going to do? If you said no and refused, I'm not giving you my phone. What's the worst that he can do? You're camped out here already. There's nothing short of like a little fight breaking out and you beat the shit out of each other or something, or one just annihilates the other. That's going to happen. So this guy definitely could have just refused. Alright, it's starting to come back to me a bit. Yeah, because the girl ends up eating the death head fungus, I think is what the expert calls it. And it looks identical, almost, except it has a black tip on the top. Which, I don't know how she confused that shit. I didn't get there yet. But now I remember. And then she starts seeing premonitions and visions and stuff. Which is, like I said, a clever idea. And the way he explains all this, and like you get a little bit of like ancient lore. And he says the ancient druids used to think that if you took these and survived, because he said if you take them, your heart explodes, and then your lungs and kidneys explode. And the guy asks, what if you live? And he says the druid said that it's like a portal to another dimension, and then you can commune with the dead, and all this crazy shit. And it's interesting. It definitely grabs your attention. Then we get a scene with Troy as one of the guys, and Holly is one of the girls. And the other girl, not Tara, is Lisa or some shit. I'm pretty sure it was Lisa. Who cares? But at least he got some names. They get a scene where he's trying to hook up with her, and he's saying his girlfriend's being stingy and not giving him sex, and it's all terrible. Like the whole scene, the dialogue is really worse than I remember in this movie. And like I said, the only likable characters are Tara and Shroom Expert. So Tara oversees that conversation between Holly and Bluto, which all I can think of is Popeye. And then from there, it goes to the actor, I forget his name, who played Bluto in the Popeye movie, who's also in Pieces, which I adore that film. And she ends up tripping, like not on a shroom, but she ends up falling down. And then I guess it's fine. The explanation for why she eats the death head mushroom, she just didn't know there was a difference with the black dot on it. Maybe she just assumed it was old or something. It's enough for me to believe, at least. But the fact that he didn't hand a picture of this mushroom to all these people before they all went separately looking for mushrooms, and none of these people, it seems, have ever done this except for him. All of that is absolutely insane. So Tara ends up having like a seizure, and she starts having premonitions and flashes, looks like of the past too. And Shroom Expert ends up coming and saying, alright, you lived through it. You're going to be alright. You just got to ride it out. And again, it's the death head mushroom, but yet she survived. I mean, it doesn't really live up to its name. So she's resting in the tent, and the rest of them gather around the campfire. And they say to Shroom Expert, tell us a story about leprechauns or, I forget, banshees. And he says, that's all bullshit. And the true story is the thing you want to hear. And then he goes into this whole backstory. And even though it starts out interesting and disturbing, it's very convoluted. I don't even understand it fully. There was like this brotherhood, religious order. They were called the Black Knights. And there's a house, the house that all this shit happens in is right nearby where they're camping. And this guy knows it. And yet he decided this is the place to take everyone to trip on shrooms near the house that the legend ends with, that they're still out there. None of it makes sense. So this one black brother was like a complete sadist, and he tortured all the children even more so. And then he like pretty much took over and was like a tyrant of sorts, like in this religious order. And anyone who defied him, he would murder them and cut their tongues out and shit. So there were like these twins, young kids, it sounds like. And he burnt one of them, puts a sack on his head to hide the burns, and then he ends up hanging his twin and has him watch. And then they end up calling the twin who survived the Lonely Twin. It's very convoluted, this backstory, like I said. But the survivors are the black brother, the evil tyrant, and the Lonely Twin. So the both of them are supposedly still roaming around these woods. And he thinks it's a brilliant idea to camp next to this. Oh, and the black brother, the Death Head Shrooms play into this too. I forget who put it in his soup, but they put 3 of the mushrooms, the death heads, in his soup. And then there's a huge massacre. There was like 78 people murdered. Again, most of it's alright, but it just goes on for too long. I will say, though, the atmosphere is pretty good in this movie so far, despite a lot of the unlikable characters and stupidity. And the images that Tara is seeing while she's sleeping, while this story is being told, like she's subconsciously hearing it in some way. She's seeing images and visions and stuff. That looks cool. So since that intersplices with the story, like that adds to it a bit too. And then of course some of the girls are freaking out from this story and say enough, we don't want to hear anymore. And he goes on to say that still to this day, weird things happen around shroom season. And that people show up mutilated, and it's always with the same weapon that this dude used on the children. It has like a 3-inch blade inserted into a piece of wood. But they find people with that same MO, that they were killed with that type of blade. And again, he thinks it's a great idea to trip balls right by this house and in these woods when this is supposed to happen during shroom season, which they are currently in. And then the blonde hippie dude is in the tent with his girlfriend, and they take some other hallucinogenic drug on top of the mushrooms, and then she starts seeing somebody around the tent, and then so does he, and they end up getting out of the tent, and then everybody's up, and he thinks it's Bluto that was peeping on him, and this is the second time he's giving this guy shit for taking steroids or some shit. But then hilariously, the blonde hippie says, "Don't worry, I know karate," to his girl. And then he gets knocked in the face by Bluto and breaks his nose. That's very funny. I will say this, though, even though there are scenes in this movie here and there that have real bad dialogue and writing and stuff, there are scenes that are funny and things that do work, and lines when they're fighting back and forth, the girls and shit, and calling each other Chewbacca because she's got a hairy pussy, she says. All that stuff is funny and all that works. So it's not all bad dialogue throughout this movie, but it's here and there. It's spread pretty evenly throughout. So Bluto, after getting in an argument with his girl because she thinks it was him peeping on the other two, he gets thrown out of the tent and he's tripping his balls off. And then he sees this like woman, but I like how she moves. It's all CGI. I like how she moves though, like very jankily. That looks cool. But you get a close up of her and you see her tits. And I swear it looks like CGI tits. Like it all looks CGI. It doesn't look like that's an actress. Like an actual person there with actual tits. It looks all CGI generated. It really like threw me for a loop. But maybe that's how it's supposed to be because he's tripping. I mean, it makes sense, but I just thought it was very jarring when I first saw it. So apparently I totally forgot how much comedy is in this movie. I mean, this is a horror comedy with how absurd it gets. Because then this happens to Bluto.
Hello?
Well.
You could talk.
That's because you're out of your mind.
You see a girl?
She went that way.
Thanks.
Wouldn't do that if I were you. You know you're fucked.
Yes, I know.
I mean, dead fucked.
Yeah, you're just a fucking cow.
A fucking cow that can fucking talk.
And it works for me 1,000%. It is hilarious. All of that humor works for me. A lot of the dialogue, as I keep saying, the dialogue humor, like all the stuff that's supposed to be funny with the conversations and arguments between the couples and stuff like that, none of that humor works for me. So it's very weird. This is a very weird watch. Yeah, the second act of this movie really starts to pick up and be pretty enjoyable. And it does keep that pretty cool and creepy atmosphere going throughout it. But also that same tone of just tripping on shrooms. Like, it's just all distorted. And this movie does do a good job, as I remembered, of playing with time. Because then Bluto walks off. And he ends up seeing the girl again in a car. And he ends up just going up to the car window thinking it's someone. I don't know. He's tripping. And he sticks his dick in the window and he's getting his dick sucked by this ghost, this hallucination, whatever. But then he gets his dick crushed, like Kendall style from Pieces, which we talked about earlier, by this druid-looking guy. And then we see Tara wake up. And then she goes out looking for Bluto and sees him talking to the cow again. And it's really fun. It has some camp to it, which is rare for a slasher film or even a film like this in the 2000s. But he's still alive. So she saw the premonition of him dying. So I want to see if his dick gets crushed again. So she walks Bluto back to the tent, and then the next morning, which is something I like about this movie too, is that it's not all set at night. It goes from night to the next morning, gets dark again. Like, I like seeing horror movies take place in the daylight, especially in the woods. That's not something you see as often as you see just in movies that are just always set at nighttime in the woods. And then they all wake up and Tara's saying, listen to me, I saw a vision, like something really bad happened to him. She didn't mention his dick was ripped off or anything like that. But she says something bad happened. I mean, we saw what she saw, right? So why wouldn't she say he was killed? And that don't make sense, but whatever. And they all go out looking for Bluto. And then Bluto conveniently took their cell phones because he was the one that was given the keys by expert of shrooms earlier at the beginning of the movie. I mean, whatever, it's fine. And then she starts explaining to the other girls what's going on in her mind and that she doesn't know what's real and the shrooms are fucking with her, but she's seeing things before they happen. And then she does say that she saw Bluto get murdered. So, apologies all around. And the guys are separated from the girls for some reason. I don't know, it doesn't really make sense. And the hippie dude is playing with frog cum and saying how trippy it is. I swear to you, I'm not making this shit up. So then the girls find Bluto's body and start freaking out, of course. And his body looks good, like his dead corpse, but you only see like his face and down to maybe his torso, so we have no confirmation if his dick was crushed to death. That doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. We have no dick crushing confirmation for cause of death, and if I don't mention it again, that means we never do get dick crushing confirmation. So then Tara ends up seeing the sandcrawler looking druid ghost or whatever killer in the woods and freaks out, and then the rest of them will start splitting up, of course, and one of them ends up at a shack, which I'm presuming these are the same weirdos of the woods, I'll dub them, as the people who dragged off the goat for dinner earlier, right? But they say, yeah, come inside for now, and she takes shelter with the weirdos of the woods. This is actually a pretty damn fun movie. And I don't know if it's just I'm in the perfect mind state for it. Garlic butter strain. Seek that out if you're into it. Many minutes earlier. I'm not getting into the... I would never endorse or tell someone to go and take shrooms or anything like that. But I love all the camera work in this movie. Real surreal looking. And again, really good at blending reality from just what they're hallucinating. It does that extremely well in this movie. Then we get a decent reveal. I mean, if these are the same people who ate the goat earlier, because I said in that scene, one of them was like talking like a caveman. He wasn't speaking English, he was just making sounds like he was feral or some shit. Both of these guys could talk. So I don't know, it doesn't matter, but they end up revealing that they were at that house and were some of the kids that got away, that were being tortured all the time and everything. So it works, it's fine, but they're acting super creepy, and they pull the bullshit that you see in a few movies where she asks, do you have a phone? And they say, yes, it's over there. And then she goes and picks it up. It doesn't work. And then he has the audacity to say, oh, you asked if we had a phone. You didn't ask if it worked. Fuck you, movie. So then they say that this is really happening to her, where she says, I'm just tripping. And they have mushrooms in jars all over the place, talk about how powerful they are. And they say that the guy that they've been seeing, the druid sandcrawler, is the Black Knight. So we have yet to see the Lonely Twin. And this is the second time the name Bernie's been mentioned. It's just Bernie, when the other two are the Black Knight and the Lonely Twin. I don't know, that's weird. But Shroom Expert mentions the name Bernie earlier at the campfire scene. So this is the second time we're hearing of this infamous Bernie. So apparently Tara and Shroom Expert have some type of thing going, or potential thing, where they both don't know yet, but they obviously want to fuck each other and love each other. So, I mean, fine, but like I said, even though they are the best characters in this movie, they're still not great enough for me to really care about any of that. So none of that really works for me. Let me also say this. An hour into an hour and 24-minute movie, this isn't a slasher film. Like, this is very misbranded and misadvertised and mismarketed as a slasher. Unless we start seeing a whole massacre take place in the last 24 minutes, it's only an hour and 24 minutes of this movie, this is much more of a psychological horror or thriller. I mean, if you want to call it that, or I don't know exactly what genre to throw this into, like deeper than just like a psychological horror, like a subgenre of that. But this is not a slasher movie, because at the hour mark of this movie, the only kill we get is the dick crush, which is in a premonition. So it's not even what really happened to him. Like I said, never was any dick crushing confirmation. So all we see is an off-screen kill and find his body. So no body count at all in this movie. And like I said, unless there's a massacre here, which I'm sure everyone is going to die except for Tara, maybe the shroom expert. And yeah, a lot of slashers, the killings don't start until the 45-minute, 50-minute mark maybe. But this is an hour into an hour and 24-minute movie. I think that's a little long. Regarding Bernie, just can't say that seriously. I'm pretty sure he's the one kid who got away in the whole legend that expert ends up telling earlier. They mentioned that there was one kid who got away. I'm assuming that's Bernie. I don't remember him saying his name. I mean, he said at the end of that story, like that scene, where somebody said something and he said, don't be blasphemous, Bernie doesn't like that. But he doesn't say that the kid's name was Bernie when he's telling that story and says the one kid got away. None of this really matters for this type of movie. So Tara ends up seizing out again for like the fourth time in this movie. Again, cool how they film all the premonition. But why does Tara keep saying it's a dream and referring to these visions as dreams? Dreams would be implying you were sleeping. This bitch is violently vibrating and being shaken all over the place on the floor, seizing out like she's Barbara Hershey in The Entity. It's not a dream. Why doesn't she just call it a vision or something? And this is another thing, like, she says that Holly's dead and to look in the lake that they're standing nearby. And Lisa goes over and there's an axe in there, which she saw in the premonition. And then she says, look over by the rope. And so the kills are just glossed over in this movie and are just hinted at in the premonitions, except for Dick Rip. That one you see. But it seems like they just didn't have the budget, maybe, because I feel like we have another dead body here, but I feel cheated of a kill. Like, we see in the premonition, like, something happened to her, but, like, it's not like a kill. Like, you don't see her actually get killed. So you can't even really call it a kill, which hence takes away from any type of slasher element in that aspect. But it's fine. I mean, it works for the movie. I would just never refer to this movie as a slasher film. So Lisa runs away and leaves Tara and says, I'm frightened. And then Tara just collapses again into, I guess you would call a dream, but I call seizing into the fucking water with her head. And she has the vision of Lisa's death. And it's very, like, Japanese horror. The way that it's shot, it's very well shot. She's in, like, this marshland, like, wet, marshy area. You just see the weapon float up in the water, and then behind her, the druid dude ends up rising out of the water, and then you just see a flash of his face and a close-up of her eyes, and that's the kill. She's dead. And then she ends up going looking for her and finds her, and she's dead. So Lisa's gone too. Unfortunately for our shroom expert, he gets killed, again, not in a great way, but he gets killed by Sandcrawler Druid and has a little emotional moment. And Tara finds the body, and like I said, they had a little thing, so she's all emotional. It's fine. Okay, I completely forgot how this movie ended, but it's not bad, actually. And I can think of many movies that have done this type of ending much worse than this film. Tara wakes up and there's a helicopter there, and we get the reveal that she was the killer the entire time, and she killed all her friends while under the influence of the deadly mushroom that turns you into a lunatic, which is clever how it links to the legend that the black coat was poisoned with 3 of those mushrooms, and 78 people were massacred that night by him. So, I mean, it makes sense, and it's a pretty decent way of pulling off this character was the killer the whole time. I think of High Tension, and that's an example of it being done horribly, because none of it makes sense on rewatches at all. This all makes sense because it's all, you don't know what's real and what's not, and the whole premise is these people are tripping on shrooms in the woods. So all of it is very surreal, so it doesn't matter. There's not as much logic to nitpick. Oh, and she ends up escaping. She kills the ambulance driver. And, by the way, Bernie, the famous Bernie of this video, he's not the kid who survived that legend or whatever. He's one of the weirdos in the woods that, I think it was Lisa, whatever, took shelter in their house and used the bathroom and shit for a little bit and got that little bit of exposition out. Honestly, for not remembering hardly anything from this movie, I really enjoyed this a lot more than I ever remembered enjoying it. There's some stuff that's just real stupid. There's, like I said, dialogue that's just really bad at times and not interesting. And most of the characters just aren't deep at all. They're just flat as can be, just real generic stuff. But the camera work is good. The twist at the end is, like I said, it's pretty good. Like, it works for me. The cinematography and the setting is just gorgeous. And that's just a good, trippy atmosphere. I mean, this is just a decent film that's a fun popcorn horror flick. Like, I think that's probably the best way to end this and how I could describe it. But that is Shrooms from 2007. That was real fun rewatching that. But, alright guys, hope everyone's having a good morning, afternoon, or night. This has been a Horror After Dark podcast in the Sack with JT.